Do school bullies torment the new kid? They had no idea he was an MMA champion. Ethan Martinez hunched his shoulders as he navigated the crowded hallways of Westlake High School. At 15, he was shorter than most boys his age, with a slender build that made him look even younger. His olive skin bore a few acne scars, and his dark eyes constantly darted around, assessing potential threats. New to the school after his family's recent move, Ethan had spent the past 3 weeks trying to remain invisible, a tactic that had worked until today. What nobody at Westlake knew was that beneath Ethan's baggy clothes and quiet demeanor lay the physique and skills of a junior MMA champion with 5 state titles. Training since age 6 under his father, a former professional fighter, Ethan had developed discipline far beyond his years. His parents had always taught him that his skills were for the ring, not the schoolyard, a principle he honored despite the growing temptation to do otherwise. "Hey, new kid!" The voice boomed across the cafeteria. Brad Kellerman, a junior and captain of the wrestling team, stood with his lunch tray flanked by his usual companions, Derek Wilson and Travis Moore. Brad stood at 6 feet with broad shoulders and the confident posture of someone who knew the school belonged to him. His sandy blonde hair was cropped short, highlighting a strong jawline that was currently twisted into a smirk. Ethan kept his head down, focusing on his lunch. "Just ignore them. Don't engage." His father's voice echoed in his mind. "Fighting outside the ring brings nothing but trouble." "I'm talking to you, Martinez." Brad was suddenly beside him, looming over the table where Ethan sat alone. "Don't they teach manners wherever you came from?" Around them, the cafeteria had grown quieter. Students at nearby tables turned to watch, anticipation in their eyes. A few looked uncomfortable but remained silent. Even Ms. Patel, the teacher on lunch duty, seemed absorbed in her phone at the far end of the room. "I'm just trying to eat my lunch," Ethan said quietly, his accent barely noticeable after years of speech therapy. "I don't want any trouble." Brad laughed, nudging Derek. "Did you hear that? I don't want any trouble." His mocking imitation drew snickers from several tables. "Well, trouble found you, amigo." In one swift movement, Brad knocked Ethan's tray off the table, sending his lunch splattering across the floor. The cafeteria erupted in laughter. Ethan's hands curled into fists beneath the table. He could feel his heartbeat quicken, his body instinctively preparing for a fight. He pictured the sequence of moves that could lay Brad flat on his back in seconds. Instead, he forced himself to remain seated, unclenching his fists with conscious effort. "Nothing to say?" Brad taunted, leaning closer. "What's wrong? Can't speak English properly?" "Leave him alone, Brad." A girl's voice cut through the noise. Emma Chen, who sat in Ethan's English class, had stood up from her table. "Don't you have anything better to do?" Brad's attention shifted. "Aw, look at that. The new kid needs a girl to fight his battles." He turned back to Ethan. "Is that it need your girlfriend to protect you?" Ethan stood up slowly. At 5'7", he had to look up to meet Brad's eyes. "She's not my girlfriend, and I can handle myself." "Prove it," Brad challenged, giving Ethan a light shove that was anything but friendly. For a fraction of a second, Ethan's training nearly took over. He saw the opening, Brad's poor balance, his exposed side. It would take nothing to sweep his legs and bring him down. Instead, Ethan simply stepped back. "Not worth it," he said, turning to walk away. "That's what I thought." Brad's voice followed him. "El Chicano." More laughter erupted as Ethan exited the cafeteria, his ears burning with humiliation. It wasn't the first confrontation since he'd arrived at Westlake, but it was the most public. He knew from experience that things would only escalate from here. In the hallway, Emma caught up to him. "Hey, don't let them get to you. Brad's a jerk to everyone." "Thanks for speaking up," Ethan said, managing a small smile. "But it might be better if you don't. They'll target you too." Emma frowned. "That's the problem with this school. Everyone's so afraid of those guys that nobody stands up to them." She studied him curiously. "Why didn't you? You looked like you wanted to." Ethan shrugged. "Fighting doesn't solve problems. It just creates new ones. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't about fighting," Emma replied. "It's about not letting bullies define who you are." As she walked away, Ethan wondered if she was right. His family had moved 6 times in the past 8 years, following his father's coaching career. At each new school, Ethan had stayed under the radar, avoiding confrontation by remaining invisible. But Westlake would be his home for the next 3 years. Was invisibility still the right strategy? The next day, Ethan found Chicken Boy scrawled across his locker in black marker. Students passing by snickered, some openly pointing. He calmly opened his locker, exchanged his books, and continued to class as if he hadn't noticed. Inside, however, his frustration mounted. During gym class, things escalated. Coach Bennett had organized a basketball game, and Brad made sure he and Ethan were on opposing teams. What followed was less basketball and more targeted assault. Every time Ethan got the ball, Brad would check him hard, driving elbows into his ribs and shoulders into his chest. Foul. Coach Bennett would call out occasionally, but with little conviction and no real consequences. After a particularly hard hit sent Ethan sprawling onto the court, he lay there for a moment, mentally cycling through the breathing exercises his father had taught him for maintaining composure in the ring. "Need a timeout, chicken boy?" Brad taunted, standing over him. Derek and Travis laughed from nearby, Travis mimicking chicken wings with his elbows. Ethan got to his feet without responding. His side ached where Brad's elbow had connected with his ribs, but he simply returned to his position. He was used to taking hits much harder than anything Brad could deliver, but the public humiliation was becoming increasingly difficult to bear. After gym, Ethan found himself cornered in the locker room. Brad, Derek, and Travis surrounded him. As he was changing, other boys quickly grabbing their things and leaving to avoid becoming collateral damage. "You think you can just ignore me?" Brad demanded, shoving Ethan against the lockers. The metal doors rattled loudly in the now empty room. "I'm not ignoring you," Ethan replied evenly. "I'm choosing not to engage." Brad's face darkened. "Using big words doesn't make you smart, Martinez. It just makes you a pretentious little freak." He grabbed Ethan's backpack from the bench and tossed it to Derek. "Let's see what Chicken Boy carries around." Derek unzipped the bag and upended it, spilling books, papers, and personal items across the wet locker room floor. Ethan watched, silently as his belongings scattered, including a framed photograph of his family that cracked as it hit the ground. "Oops," Derek said with exaggerated innocence. "Butterfingers." Ethan's gaze fixed on the photograph, his parents and younger sister smiling back at him from behind fractured glass. His father's words about restraint suddenly seemed very distant. Travis knelt and picked up a small medallion that had fallen from the backpack's side pocket. It was a junior championship medal Ethan carried as a good luck charm. "What's this?" Travis tossed it to Brad. "Baby's first participation trophy?" Brad examined the medallion, reading the inscription. For a moment, confusion crossed his face. "Mixed martial arts junior state champion." His eyes narrowed suspiciously. "This is yours?" Ethan remained silent, his breathing measured and controlled. "Don't give them anything. Don't react." "No." "This is yours," Brad decided, pocketing the medal. "Probably stole it. I think I'll keep it until you can prove it belongs to you." He stepped closer, his face inches from Ethan's. "Maybe you need to show us some of these supposed skills, chicken boy." When Ethan still didn't respond, Brad grabbed him by the shirt collar. "What's wrong? Can't hear me?" "I hear you fine," Ethan said quietly. "And I'd like my medal back, please." Brad released him with a shove. "Make me." For a split second, Ethan considered it, his body tensed, muscle memory preparing for movement that would have Brad on the ground before he could blink. But the consequences flashed through his mind. Suspension, possibly expulsion, another move to another school, his father's disappointment. Instead, he silently gathered his scattered belongings, including the cracked photo frame, carefully, placing everything back into his bag while the three bullies watched and laughed. "That's what I thought," Brad said, tossing the medal up and catching it repeatedly. "All talk, no action. See you tomorrow, chicken boy." As they left, Ethan remained in the locker room, sitting on the bench long after the final bell had rung. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother, asking if he'd missed the bus. He replied that he was staying late to study, buying himself some time alone. In truth, Ethan needed to think. 3 weeks at Westlake had already become unbearable. The thought of 3 years stretched before him like an endless gauntlet. His father had always taught him that his training gave him the confidence to walk away from fights. But what happened when walking away only invited more abuse? That evening, Ethan was quieter than usual at dinner. His mother noticed the crack in the family photo he'd placed on his desk but didn't press when he claimed it had been an accident. His father, however, saw through the facade. "Training room after dinner," Marco Martinez said simply. "You look like you need to hit something." In the converted garage that served as their home gym, Ethan unleashed 3 weeks of frustration on the heavy bag. His father held it steady, watching his son's technique with a professional eye. "School troubles?" Marco asked between combinations. Ethan threw a particularly vicious right hook. "Nothing I can't handle. Doesn't look like nothing from where I'm standing." His father stepped away from the bag. "Let's spar, 3 minutes." They circled each other on the mats, Ethan's movements fluid and practiced. Despite his small stature, there was nothing awkward or weak about him here. His father threw a testing jab that Ethan slipped easily, countering with a combination that his father blocked. "Your mother thinks we should talk to the school," Marco said, fainting low. "No." Ethan was emphatic, dropping his guard momentarily, enough for his father to tap him with a light cross to the cheek. "Focus," Marco warned. "Never drop your defense even when you're talking." They continued exchanging blows, neither going full strength but with enough force to require real skill to avoid being hit. "So what's your plan?" Marco asked. "Keep taking abuse?" "I'm following your rules," Ethan replied, executing a perfect slip and body shot that made his father grunt appreciatively. "No fighting outside the ring?" Marco nodded. "Good rule. But there's a difference between starting fights and standing up for yourself." He caught Ethan with a sweep that nearly took his legs out. "Sometimes you have to show people who you are. So they'll leave you alone." The timer buzzed, ending their round. Both were breathing hard, but neither winded. Ethan grabbed his water bottle, considering his father's words. "If I show them who I am, it'll just cause more problems." Marco shook his head. "Hiding who you are is already causing problems." He placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "I taught you not to fight outside the ring so you wouldn't become a bully yourself, not so you could be bullied by others." "So what? Are you saying that I should fight back next time?" "I'm saying there's a middle ground between hiding your strength and abusing it." Marco smiled slightly. "Find it." The next day, Ethan arrived at school with a new resolve. He wouldn't seek confrontation, but he wouldn't hide anymore either. The strategy lasted until third period, when he discovered his gym clothes had been stuffed into a toilet in the boys' bathroom, soaking wet and reeking. With no choice but to participate in gym class in his regular clothes, Ethan earned a stern lecture from Coach Bennett about proper attire and responsibility. From across the gym, Brad and his friends smirked triumphantly. The other students averted their eyes, their silence a tacit endorsement of the bullying. After school, Ethan found Brad, Derek, and Travis waiting for him near the bike racks where he'd locked up his mountain bike that morning. The area was secluded from the main exit, hidden from easy view by the maintenance shed. "Looking for something?" Brad asked innocently, jangling a set of keys, among them the key to Ethan's bike lock. Ethan stopped a few feet away, counting 3 of them, assessing distances, angles, old habits. "Those are mine." "Prove it," Brad challenged, continuing their routine from the day before. Derek and Travis moved to flank Ethan, creating a familiar triangle formation, a basic intimidation tactic that spoke volumes about their experience bullying other students. "I don't need to prove anything," Ethan replied calmly. "But I would, like my keys back and my medal." Brad's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "Medal? I don't know what you're talking about." "The championship medal you took yesterday. It's important to me." "Oh, that fake medal?" Brad laughed. "I threw it away. If you want to be a champion so badly, maybe you should try out for a real sport instead of pretending." Something shifted in Ethan at those words. The medal had been his first major win, presented to him by his beaming father after months of grueling training. The thought of it lying discarded in some trash bin ignited a spark of anger he'd been suppressing for too long. "Last chance," Ethan said quietly. "My keys. Now." Brad glanced at his friends, amused by what he perceived as an empty threat. "Or what, chicken boy? You'll run away again?" "No," Ethan said, "I won't run." When Brad stepped forward to shove him as he had before, Ethan was no longer there. With a subtle shift of weight, he moved just enough for Brad's momentum to carry him forward off balance. It wasn't a fighting technique, just simple physics that made Brad stumble awkwardly, nearly falling. Confusion and then rage flashed across Brad's face as he regained his footing. "You're dead, Martinez." This time, Brad lunged with real intent. Ethan sidestepped again, this time sticking his foot out just enough to clip Brad's ankle. The bigger boy went sprawling onto the pavement, skinning his palms and tearing his jeans at the knee. Derek and Travis exchanged uncertain glances before moving in together. Ethan stood his ground, his posture shifting subtly into a fighting stance so natural he didn't even realize he'd done it. "Guys, we can end this now," Ethan offered. "Just give me my things and we all walk away." Instead, Derek charged. Ethan's training took over. He deflected Derek's wild punch and used his momentum to guide him directly into Travis, sending both boys tumbling to the ground in an undignified heap. The entire exchange had taken less than 3 seconds, and Ethan had barely moved from his spot. Brad was on his feet again, blood from his scraped palms staining his white school shirt. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You're gonna pay for that." For the first time since arriving at Westlake, Ethan smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "No, I really don't think I am." What followed wasn't so much a fight as a demonstration. Brad threw a haymaker that Ethan ducked easily. In return, Ethan delivered a precise strike to Brad's solar plexus. Not full force, but enough to fold the larger boy over, gasping for breath. Derek and Travis attempted to rush him from behind, but Ethan had already anticipated the move. A spinning back kick sent Derek sprawling, while Travis received an open-handed strike to the sternum that dropped him to his knees. In under 30 seconds, all three bullies were on the ground, none seriously injured, but all thoroughly outclassed. Ethan stood over Brad, hand extended. "My keys," he said simply. Wheezing, Brad fumbled in his pocket and produced the keyring. Ethan took it, then knelt beside him. "The medal, too. Where is it, really?" "Locker," Brad gasped. "Inside pocket of my gym bag." Ethan nodded. "We're going to walk to your locker now, all of us. And after I get my medal back, we're going to have a conversation about how things will be different from now on." A small crowd had gathered at the edge of the bike area, drawn by the commotion. Among them, Emma watched with wide eyes, her expression a mixture of shock and something that might have been admiration. Several students had phones out recording the aftermath. "Holy crap," someone whispered. "Did you see that? The new kid just destroyed Brad and his crew. Who is this guy?" As Ethan helped Brad to his feet, maintaining a firm grip on his arm, he caught Emma's eye and gave her a small nod. She smiled back, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. In the locker room, Brad retrieved the medal as promised, handing it over with uncharacteristic deference. His earlier bravado had evaporated, replaced by wary respect. "Have you really won 5 state championships?" he asked as Ethan examined the medal for damage. "Yes." Ethan tucked the medal safely into his pocket. "I've been training since I was 6. "Why didn't you fight back before?" Travis asked, still rubbing his chest where Ethan had struck him. "Because I was taught that fighting is for the ring, not for solving problems." Ethan looked at each of them in turn. "I still believe that. What happened today wasn't a fight, it was me standing up for myself after you left me no choice." Derek, nursing a bruised ego more than any physical injury, scowled. "You think this changes anything?" "When people find out, they already know," Ethan interrupted, showing them his phone where notifications from social media were already appearing with video clips of the incident. "By tomorrow, everyone will have seen what happened. But what happens next is up to you three." "What do you mean?" Brad asked cautiously. "I mean we have 2 options. 1, you continue targeting me, and I continue defending myself, which gets increasingly embarrassing for you. Or 2, we agree to leave each other alone and I don't mention to Coach Bennett or Principal Harris how you've been behaving." The 3 bullies exchanged glances. Their collective reputation was already damaged. Adding official school discipline would be salt in the wound. "Fine," Brad finally said. "We'll back off, but don't expect us to suddenly be friends or anything." "I don't want your friendship," Ethan replied honestly. "I just want to get through high school in peace, same as everyone else." As the 4 boys emerged from the locker room, they found the hallway lined with curious students. Word had spread quickly. Principal Harris was making his way through the crowd, a stern expression on his face. "Mr. Martinez," he called out. "My office, please. You 3 as well," he added, pointing to Brad and his friends. In the principal's office, the story unfolded from multiple perspectives, supported by video evidence from student phones. To Ethan's surprise, Emma had come forward as a witness, along with several other students who had endured Brad's bullying in silence until now. "It seems we've had a situation developing under our noses," Principal Harris said, leaning back in his chair. "Mr. Kellerman, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Moore, given the evidence and the multiple complaints I've now received, you'll all be serving 2 weeks of detention with a mandatory enrollment in our peer conflict resolution program." Brad started to protest, but thought better of it when he saw the principal's expression. "As for you, Mr. Martinez," Principal Harris continued, "while I understand you were defending yourself, physical altercations of any kind are against school policy. 3 days of after-school detention." Ethan nodded, accepting the punishment without argument. It seemed a small price to pay for the transformation that was already taking place. Word spread through Westlake like wildfire. By the next morning, Ethan's status had shifted dramatically. Students who had previously ignored him now nodded, in greeting as he passed. Younger students who had suffered under Brad's reign watched him with something approaching hero worship. In the cafeteria, Ethan no longer sat alone. Emma joined him, along with a few others who seemed eager to know more about the quiet transfer student who had overnight become a school legend. "So 5 state championships, huh?" a boy named Miguel asked as he set his tray down. "That's hardcore," Ethan shrugged. "It's just something I'm good at. Something you're good at." Emma repeated with a laugh. You took down 3 guys without breaking a sweat. That's a little more than something you're good at. Across the cafeteria, Brad and his friends entered, their usual swagger noticeably diminished. They collected their food and found seats at a far table, pointedly avoiding looking in Ethan's direction. Emma followed his gaze. Think they've learned their lesson? Maybe, Ethan replied. But change takes time. At least they know there are consequences now. After lunch, Ethan was surprised when Brad approached him alone in the hallway. The wrestler kept a respectful distance, his posture less aggressive than before. Hey, Brad said awkwardly, can we talk for a minute? Ethan tensed instinctively but nodded. Sure, Brad struggled with the words. Look, I was a jerk, okay? I've been a jerk to a lot of people. It's just how things work here. It doesn't have to be, Ethan pointed out. Brad looked away. Yeah, well, anyway, if you're really that good at MMA, maybe you could show me some moves sometime. I'm a wrestler, but I've been thinking about branching out. The request caught Ethan off guard. You want me to train with you? Not train, just, I don't know, share some techniques or whatever. Brad's attempt at nonchalance wasn't entirely convincing. Coach Bennett was talking about starting an MMA club next semester. Thought maybe we could both join. Ethan considered, the olive branch for what it was. I'd be into that. And yeah, I could show you some basic combinations sometime if you want. Relief washed over Brad's face. Cool, thanks. He hesitated, then added, and sorry about your medal, and the bike lock, and the gym clothes, and the chicken noises, Ethan added with a raised eyebrow. Brad had the grace to look embarrassed. Yeah, that too. As Brad walked away, Ethan felt a weight lift that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. The constant vigilance, the energy spent on avoidance and endurance, all of it had been exhausting in ways he hadn't fully appreciated until now. After school, Ethan found his father waiting in the pickup line instead of taking the bus as usual. Principal Harris called, Marco explained, as Ethan climbed into the passenger seat. Want to tell me what happened? Ethan recounted the events of the past few days, finishing with his conversation with Brad. His father listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. So, Marco said when Ethan had finished, you found the middle ground? Ethan nodded. I think so. I didn't start it and I didn't hurt them more than necessary. And now this boy wants you to teach him? Just some basics, Ethan clarified. I think he's trying to save face, but also, I don't know. Maybe he actually wants to learn. Marco nodded approvingly. Teaching requires respect in both directions. It could be good for both of you. He glanced at his son. Your mother won't be thrilled about the detention, though. Worth it, Ethan decided. For the first time since we moved here, I feel like I can just be myself. That's all we ever wanted for you, Marco said. To be strong enough to be yourself without fear. The following days brought further changes to Ethan's school life. The chicken boy graffiti disappeared from his locker, replaced by curious questions about his training regimen and fighting career. Teachers who had previously overlooked him now paid attention when he spoke in class, seeming to reassess the quiet student who had revealed unexpected depths. In gym class, Coach Bennett pulled Ethan aside. Martinez, this MMA club rumor, there any truth to it? Brad mentioned something about next semester, Ethan replied. The coach nodded thoughtfully. I've been trying to get approval for a while. Having a student with actual competition experience might help convince the board. He studied Ethan with new interest. You interested in helping me put together a proposal? Could use your insights on training methods, safety protocols. I'd like that, Ethan said, genuinely enthused by the idea. My dad might be willing to help too. He's certified as a youth coach. Coach Bennett's eyes widened. Your father's a coach. Bring him to the next PTA meeting. I want to introduce him to some people. 2 weeks later, Ethan sat in the school auditorium beside Emma, watching Brad and his friends complete their final day of detention by setting up chairs for the evening's band concert. The 3 boys worked efficiently, occasionally glancing over to where Ethan sat. Brad offered a small nod of acknowledgement, which Ethan returned. That's still weird to see, Emma commented. A month ago they were making your life miserable. Now they're practically civil. People can change when they have to, Ethan said. Sometimes they just need the right motivation. Fear of getting their butts kicked again? Emma suggested, with a smirk. Ethan shook his head. More like fear of losing status. Brad's whole identity was built around being the toughest guy at Westlake. Once that was gone, he had to figure out who he actually is. And who is he? Still figuring that out, Ethan replied. But yesterday at lunch I saw him stop some senior from messing with a freshman, so maybe he's finding a better use for his size and reputation. Emma leaned back in her seat. And what about you? Who are you now that you're not hiding anymore? Ethan considered the question. In the span of a month, he'd gone from invisible new kid to reluctant school celebrity. Neither role felt quite right. I'm just Ethan, he finally answered. Someone who's done hiding his strengths, but also someone who knows when to use them. As students began filing into the auditorium for the concert, Ethan spotted his parents entering with his younger sister. His father caught his eye and gave him a proud nod, not for his fighting skills or his medals, but for finding his own way to stand tall. The crisis point had passed, but the lessons remained. Ethan knew that his journey at Westlake was just beginning, but for the first time since the move, he felt truly present in his own life, not just passing through until the next relocation, but putting down roots, making connections, and standing firmly in his truth. And to think it had all started with 3 bullies who had chosen the wrong new kid to target.